It was a hot August afternoon at the Mayfield Fire Department. The old desk lamp hummed, the vents creaked, and the men on duty chatted as they waited for the next call. Outside, the smell of dry grass and hot asphalt filled the air. The radio hissed, but was silent. Alex Reeves, the 38-year-old shift supervisor, was checking the equipment log. His movements were precise, without fuss, as if he were stitching his thoughts to the pages. His colleagues respected his calm. He didn't raise his voice, didn't make loud phrases, just did his job. The city knew him as a man who would come at the most terrible hour and stay until the end. Usually, at these moments, he would write reports or tell the young guys what mistakes were unnoticed. Today, he wanted to have time to call Sarah after lunch and ask how his son Logan's swimming lesson and his daughter Emma's school project went. The radio clicked. The dispatcher announced a barn fire on a farm outskirts of the city. Alex looked up, nodded to the driver, pulled on his jacket, and pulled up his hood. The truck's engine roared, the gate swung open, and the silver tanker slid out onto the highway. 10 minutes later, the fire was out. Old bales of hay, a spark from the generator, nothing serious. The farm owner shook Alex's hand, thanked the crew, and handed him a crate of peaches, a simple but warm gesture. The boys were joking around in the cockpit as they walked back. Alex listened to the laughter, but his mind wandered. He remembered Sarah laughing the day before as she poured flour from a bag into a can, and how the flour had landed on her nose. Corporal Stevens interjected, "Chief, the phone." The node captain's voice was strained. "Sir, you'd better go up to the office." The short hallway seemed longer than usual. On the walls hung photos of missions, the faces of fallen comrades. 3 people stood in the office: the department chief, patrol officer Schaefer, and a woman in a dark suit. Schaefer held his cap to his chest. The woman introduced herself as an investigator, but Alex heard only 5 words: Sarah, children, head-on collision. Then silence, as if after an explosion. He didn't fall. His knees trembled, but held upright, a reflex developed over the years. The words swirled and settled somewhere deep, turning into a hum. Alex nodded. He heard his own voice, understood. The woman seemed to hold out a business card. He didn't take it. Officer Schaefer wanted to add something, but the director raised his palm. Enough. Alex stepped outside. A warm wind blew from the hills, and the air smelled of dust. He sat down on the concrete threshold, resting his elbows on his knees. The world narrowed to a narrow strip of pavement. An ant crawled below, dragging a splinter. "Come back, sir," came a call from inside. Alex rose as if on someone else's legs and went back to work. 40 minutes later, a new message came in. A tanker truck had overturned on the highway. A fire was possible. Instinct kicked in. Alex buttoned up his jacket and gave short orders. The car sped along the highway, the siren pounding his chest. The pine strips along the road flashed by like frames of film. Engines roared at the scene of the accident. Smoke hung low. Police had cordoned off the area. Alex stepped toward the tanker, but his gaze caught on a battered minivan in the ditch. The same color as Sarah's car. He froze. His ears were empty. Someone shouted his name. A stream of foam hit the back of the truck, bringing back the sound. Alex blinked, signaled, "Continue." The fire was quickly put out. The medics worked on the tanker driver. Alex sat down on the step, hiding his face in his hands. Corporal Stevens sat down next to him. "Chief, go home." Alex straightened up. 40 minutes left in the shift. His voice was even. The locker room smelled of smoke and peaches. Alex took off his uniform and folded it neatly. His phone vibrated on the bench. Dozens of notifications, missed calls, photos of his family on the beach. He locked the screen and put the device in the closet. The keys jingled in his pocket. The sun was setting. Alex got into the truck, looked back. The child seats were empty. He drove off, forgetting to buckle up. The patrolman blinked, recognizing the car, and drove away. The house on Willow Lane was quiet. The lawn was tidy. The neighbor's dog growled. In the hallway were Emma's bright sneakers, Logan's backpack, Sarah's jacket. He picked up the jacket, smelled the perfume, and something inside snapped. The jacket fell. There was a note in the kitchen, "Back at 6, love." He sat down at the table and looked at the clock. 19:04. The morning cup of coffee was still not washed. Alex poured water, washed it, put it on the drying rack, wiped the table. There were school notebooks and colored pencils in the living room. A drawing of a dinosaur with a caption, "For Dad." Alex pressed the sheet to his chest, then put it back, as if he was afraid of leaving fingerprints. The phone rang. He picked it up, but the silence felt easier. He declined the call. The curtains fluttered in the bedroom. The closet showed empty hangers where Sarah's skirt had hung. Under the bed were Emma's red felt boots, a souvenir from the fair. Alex closed his eyes. Memory pulled out the morning laughter, the smell of toast, Logan's question, "Dad, are you coming to the game?" Night had fallen. The hallway light was on like a duty lamp. Alex sat down on the carpet, leaned against the wall. His phone was flashing messages. He turned off the sound and opened the voicemail. Message 3:12 p.m. "Honey, we're going out for ice cream. The kids picked strawberries. See you tonight. Love you." The last word was drawn out, as if Sarah was waving to the kids. Tears welled up. He clenched his fists. The corridor seemed like a training tunnel. Move forward. Don't lose your bearings. He washed his face with cold water. In the mirror, his face was expressionless, like a wall of fireproof tiles. The clock showed 2:11. Alex went out into the yard. The sky was black, the stars dim. He turned on the flashlight, tried to straighten the mudguard of Logan's bike, but the metal creaked. Emma's alarm clock beeped in the kitchen. Alex returned to the house, turned it off, and put it in his pocket. A faint dawn was breaking through the kitchen glass. Alex stood up, walked into the living room, and picked up a fire helmet from the shelf, a birthday present. He ran his finger along the ridge and put it back. In 14 hours, a new shift. It was easier to breathe there, among the hoses and gasoline. At 7 o'clock in the morning, the bells struck one. Alex stood by his bedroom window. The school bus stop was empty. He whispered, "I'll be there, Logan." His shoulders jerked. A sharp intake of breath replaced the tears. He changed his clothes, tied a garbage bag, carried it to the dumpster. Simple actions stood between him and the abyss. As the sun rose, the phone vibrated. Sarah's brother's name. Alex watched until the ringing stopped. He wrote, "Call James," on the palm of his hand, as if it were a briefing item. At 9, he made coffee and went out onto the veranda. The coffee burned his tongue. He listened to the morning sounds, the neighbors' cars, a child's laughter, the creak of a newspaper basket. The world went on, not noticing the whole. Alex whispered, "I'll go too." Back inside, he opened the closet and took out his dress uniform. The jacket smelled of dry cleaning. He hung it on the door and smoothed out the fabric. In the reflection, the uniform looked alien. 10 o'clock. A letter of condolence from the mayor arrived. Alex passed by without reading it. The voice assistant in the living room spoke, reminding him about the brigade's training. He turned off the device. The plastic of the remote cracked. There was a calendar with a lighthouse hanging in the kitchen. August 31st was circled "Family Picnic." Alex ran his finger and tore off the sheet, leaving a blank wall of plaster. For some reason, the empty space was calming. He turned on the washing machine, threw on his uniform, socks, his son's t-shirt, and his daughter's pink pajamas. The drum spun, the water making a noise like rain on a metal roof. Alex sat on the floor in front of the machine and listened. At noon, he received a report notification. Incident 4573 closed. He deleted the message without opening it. I woke up from a short call, the captain of the unit. "Alex, take care of yourself. We are nearby." Alex thanked me, turned off the phone, and put it in a drawer with old travel routes. The smell of damp earth mingled with the scent of Sarah's perfume in the house. Alex set the bucket by the door, took off his shoes, and walked up the stairs. The nursery door was ajar. He turned on the Starry Night light he'd bought for Christmas. Soft lights danced across the ceiling. He sat on his son's bed, lowering his head. The bedspread remembered the child's weight. The dense silence pressed on his eardrums. Alex turned off the night light, closed the door, and opened the window. The summer rain had begun. Drops hit the roof like fractional alarm signals. He went down to the garage where the tools and spare tires were. There was a bike kit. He picked up an empty gas can with a sticker on it that said Grand Canyon Trip, returned it to the shelf, and turned off the light. The rain was getting heavier, drowning out his thoughts. Inside, he sat down on the couch and turned on the TV without sound. News footage flashed by traffic, the stock market, the weather. A feed of an accident on Route 12 appeared. A black and white silhouette of a twisted sedan. Alex turned off the screen. Deep in the house, Emma's alarm went off again. Alex stood up, turned it off, and put it in his pocket. He opened the front door. The rain had stopped. A pale streak of dawn in the east. Alex said, "I'm here." He clenched his fists, felt his pulse. A new day was beginning, and he took the first difficult step. Alex woke to the soft patter of rain on the roof. The kitchen tiles were cold, but he walked barefoot, as if checking that the house could still support his weight. His coffee was cold before he took his first sip. He stared out the window, the echoing "why" lingering. Then the memories came, not like a movie, but like flashes of light. "Are you sure this is your choice?" he asked Sarah 12 years ago as they stood in a 24-hour diner on Route 61. "Absolutely," she smiled and ate the French fries, already cold. "I work nights, and a phone call can always ruin dinner. Alex, I signed up for this with you. You're saving people. I'll just be home a little more often with the kettle." He handed her a cheap ring. He was on apprentice pay that year. Sarah sighed, said yes, and hung the ring on a chain so she wouldn't lose it. They got married that night with the clerk on duty, and later swapped the rings when they could afford gold. The yearbook was waiting on the top shelf of the closet. On the gray page was a photo of their backyard wedding. Sarah, in a simple dress, holding a bouquet of daisies, smiling as if she had just heard a joke. Alex, in a pressed firefighter's reserve uniform, shoulder straps too big, eyes confused. "A fireman's wife should sleep soundly," Captain Martin would say, winking at Sarah. "And quickly heat up dinner in the microwave," she answered, and everyone laughed. His memory flashed back to the White Room at St. Augustine. He remembered the smell of antiseptic and the damp air of the neonatal ward. Sarah's screams in contractions, clutching his hand. "Just a little more, sweetheart," Alex whispered. "If you say breathe one more time, I swear I'll bite you," she panted. A minute later, the midwife lifted the baby. "Congratulations, boy. Logan," Alex said, as if the name had existed long before the baby arrived. 2 years later, they laughed in the same room when Emma was born. "No bites this time?" Alex asked. "It depends on what else you come up with to advise," Sarah teased, but her fingers easily slid into his palm. Alex, in the present, opened the refrigerator and closed it without taking anything. The funeral was to begin in 2 hours. He put on a fresh shirt, buttoning it slowly, as if each movement marked irreversibility. Several cars had gathered in the yard. Corporal Stevens came out to meet them. "Boss, can I help you?" "I'm not on shift," Alex answered dryly. "I know. Today we are just friends." Stevens handed him a black jacket. On the breast pocket were little paper cutouts of lights. The wives of the volunteer society had cut out the symbols in memory of the fireman's family. Alex pinned the lights on, his fingers shaking. Outside the town church, rows of white folding chairs stood. In front, 3 closed caskets draped in state flags. On a flower shelf, a stuffed dinosaur that Emma carried in her backpack. Alex, Sarah's mother, Mrs. Harper, called quietly. "I'm glad you made it," he replied. "We are always there, even if we don't know how to help." There was a board by the entrance with pictures of the family. The first was Logan's birthday, 5 candles, Sarah crumbling cake onto a plate. The second was Emma with paint on her face, Alex holding a fire hose, making a rainbow of water. The hubbub of voices died down as the town priest took the podium. "Today we say goodbye to 3 souls at once. We have lost the radiant Sarah, a caring mother and volunteer school nurse. We mourn the loss of 7-year-old Emma, beloved on the block for her "Why is the sky blue?" questions. We cry for 9-year-old Logan, who once said, "When I grow up, I'm going to fight fires with my daddy." Alex sat with his hands clasped together as if he were holding a bridge together. The priest spoke of light, of faith, of love being stronger than death. The words passed through him like a draft. He heard someone sob behind him. It was Mrs. Dolly, their neighbor, bringing in vegetables from her garden. The pastor invited those who wished to say a few words. Captain Martin went first. "Alex, brother," he began, looking out into the room. "You taught us courage, but today your courage inspires more than any rooftop we saved. We promise to remember your loved ones every time we put on our uniforms." Sarah had once sung in a choir, and the girls at school put on a recording of her voice. The music faded to a low cadence. Alex tensed. In the recording, Sarah laughed at the beginning, catching herself before the introduction. "Oops, not like that again." That laughter hit harder than words. He hung his head, his shoulders shaking, but there were no tears. Time dragged on. The priest nodded to Alex. His turn, if he wanted. He stood up. There was a heavy silence. "I don't know what to say," he said, his gaze on Sarah's coffin. Sarah loved mornings. She'd wake the kids with a song and me with coffee. If I was late, she'd write, "Is the hero who saves the world hungry?" I'd write, always. He turned his gaze to the small coffins. Logan dreamed of building robots to help the firefighters. Emma said robots were boring and wanted to paint them in different colors. The kids argued, but always hugged before bed. They taught me to appreciate the moments. "I don't know how to live without them," he continued, "but I know they loved life. I'll try not to waste that gift. Thank you to everyone here." He returned to his place. Tom, his neighbor, put his hand on his shoulder. Sarah's song came from the speakers, now clear, without laughter. After the service, the procession headed to the cemetery. The fireworks machine guns boomed 3 times honor to the fire department. Alex winced at each volley. The commander of the first car handed him a folded flag. "On behalf of a grateful city, sir." Alex accepted. Raindrops glistened on the fabric. He clutched the flag to his chest and stood up straight. Several children from Emma's school released white balloons. The clouds moved low, holding back the rain. The earth was freshly dug. Sarah's coffin was lowered first. The metal clanked against the rails. Then the 2 small coffins lay side by side. Sarah's parents wept openly. Alex stood quietly, as if guarding their peace. As the gravediggers began to throw in the first shovels of earth, Alex stepped forward. He took a handful of damp soil. "Farewell, my dears," he whispered, and threw the earth from above. The thin rain grew heavier. People opened umbrellas. Wet leaves stuck to their boots. Alex's mother approached. Her eyes were puffy. "Son, are we going home?" "I will be the last one left," he replied. The headstones were covered with flowers. Someone left a baseball card of Logan. Someone dropped off a drawing of Emma. The school principal placed a letter from the class on the grave. "We'll miss you," he said quietly. An hour later, the cemetery was empty. The clay was darkening, soaking up the rain. Alex was alone. His knees finally buckled, and he sat down on the wet ground. "Sarah," he said, peering at the name on the plaque, "you said I needed to learn to let go. I'm trying." The conversation from that first night after the wedding came back to mind. "Do you think we'll be the same in 10 years?" Sarah asked, lying on his shoulder. "I hope better," he replied. "The main thing is that we laugh. As much as possible." "I remember," Alex said out loud. "We laughed. Thank you." He stood up and brushed off the dirt. The rain was easing. The gray sky was reflected on the wet marble. He kissed his fingers and touched all 3 tablets. Then he turned and walked towards the exit. Stevens and Captain Martin were waiting at the gate. "We'll take you," Stevens said. "I'll get there myself. I need to walk." They didn't argue. Martin just said, "You don't need to go out tomorrow. We'll cover you for as long as it takes." Thank you, Alex nodded. He walked along the path between the old elms. The rain had stopped. The air smelled of wet bark. As he walked, he heard voices in his memory. Dad, we won today, Logan shouted after the school game. And I drew you with a big helmet, Emma added. Well done, my lads, he replied. These words flowed in time with the steps. I haven't forgotten, Alex whispered to himself. I promise I won't forget. He stopped at the intersection. The school bus used to meet them here. Now the sign, Caution, Children, seemed like an empty mockery. Alex touched the sign with his palm, like a child's hand. He spontaneously turned towards the fire station. The gates were closed, but the duty officer opened the window. Boss, everything okay? Just. Looking at the engines. He walked past the red cars. Each one gleamed with clean paint. Someone had attached a paper flower to the windshield of the second tanker. It had been done by the junior funeral volunteers. Alex took the flower off and put it in his pocket. A single screen was lit in the control room. It showed a map of the city. Call points, routes, all familiar. He looked and felt a quiet note of duty grow inside him. She would like me to come back, he whispered. There was a board on the wall with the shifts on duty. Tomorrow was the name Reeves. Underneath it in chalk was written family. Someone had changed the name to team. Alex took a rag, erased the chalk, and wrote, Reeves. He turned to the duty officer. I'll be there tomorrow, but I'll start later at noon. We're waiting for you, boss. He went out, feeling heavy and strangely clear. It was drizzling outside again. The first lights of the evening houses were coming on. Alex saw a long way ahead of him, but each step no longer seemed like a fall, but a movement forward. He thought of Sarah. You said laugh when you can. The corners of his mouth twitched almost imperceptibly. I'll try, he answered in a half voice. The lights of the street lamps reflected on the sidewalk. The steps drew a rhythm. 1, 2, 3. The house was approaching. Tomorrow will be a new day, and it would breathe. He opened the door, smelled wet boots, and the phone on the table blinked with unread messages from colleagues. He pressed read later and took off his jacket. Water dripped from his hair. 6 months passed. The January morning was no different from November or July. Alex Reeves stopped noticing the calendar. The alarm was set for 6, but he woke up at 4. A nightmare invariably tore at his sleep. The walls were burning again. He heard the creaking of the ceilings. He felt the heat, but his steps sank as if his boots had sunk into concrete. Sarah called his name, the children screamed, and at the loudest moment everything collapsed, leaving a heavy clap of silence. Alex sat on the edge of the bed and waited for his heart to stop beating in his throat. The kitchen was cold. A bottle of bourbon sat on the counter. He drank straight from the bottle, one deep gulp to quench the last of his sleep. After that, he poured black coffee, a strict ritual to keep the smell of alcohol from giving him away during his shift. Between shifts, the house was quiet. Alex left the children's rooms untouched. They were as tidier as 6 months ago. Emma's round table with its scattered markers, Logan's construction set by the closet. The silence intensified the absence. Dust settled in a thin layer. He didn't clean, as if afraid to erase the last traces of movement. Alex did his job mechanically, but flawlessly. The guards called him a legend, not a single miss, not a single error in the reports or water flow diagrams. He drove the car, steered with his sleeves, and set priorities like a machine. Only his eyes showed fatigue, red veins on the whites and narrow pupils. Teammate Marcus Vaughn, a burly African-American 32-year-old, noticed the change back in September. He tried to joke. Chief, if you frown, cracks will appear on your helmet. Cracks are useful. They allow the smoke to escape, Alex answered evenly. It was humor, boss. Humor takes up time, Alex said sharply and went off to check the pumps. Marcus didn't give up. Once a week after his shift, he stopped Alex near the locker room. Beer, half an hour, no more. You know the answer, Alex muttered, feeling his palms searching for the flask hidden in his inside pocket. I know, but I'll ask again. We're not nails, my friend. We can't rust. I'm not rusty. I'm on duty. Sister Lily came twice a month. Her university sedan made a familiar sound of the GPS, and Alex could hear the car as soon as he turned the corner. Lily, 30, was the complete opposite of her brother Open, a little fussy, with a notebook of lists and colorful stickers. She burst into the house, immediately opened the windows, took out old newspapers, and cooked chicken soup. Alex, we need to run the dishwasher, otherwise the smell will stay forever, she said on her first visit. Don't waste your energy. I don't eat anything at home anyway, he replied, standing by the aisle. I'll start it anyway. Bacteria don't care whether you eat or not. I'm on duty in 3 hours. All the more so. The dishwasher will do everything herself. She doesn't need a supervisor. He watched her cut the dried flowers from the vase and suddenly remembered Sarah doing the same thing in the spring. The smell of the tulip scraps hit him harder than the alcohol. Alex went out onto the veranda and lit a cigarette, to which Lily only shook her head. In February, Lily brought a box of black and white photographs of her parents. She laid them out on the table: childhood, graduations, Sarah's wedding. I want to digitize it before the film fades, she said. Do it, Alex nodded indifferently and went back into the garage. There, amid the metallic smell of machine oil, the air was not oppressive with memories. Everyday life flowed in a circle, duty garage sleep. Alcohol was getting stronger. He no longer diluted his bourbon with caffeine in the morning. At night, returning from a call, he immediately fell into a chair, drank in large gulps, waiting for warmth in his stomach. The empty bottle went into the trash bin, not waiting for dawn. One of the rare conversations with Marcus began after a difficult trip to a chemical warehouse. The fire was toxic. The alkaline snow was falling in flakes. On the way back, Marcus noticed Alex's hands shaking as he took out a cigarette. It's not the ammonia that's making you feel sick, Marcus said. Stop psychoanalyzing, Alex growled. Look, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I see a brother who is in pain. I'm not your brother. I'm your boss. All the more so. I don't want to lose my boss because of booze. There was silence in the car. Alex watched the road lights flicker and disappear like short needles. I agree to the deal, he finally said. Which one? Come tomorrow at 9. You'll help in the garage. No talking. Agreed. Marcus showed up at 9 sharp and found the duty officer's brother cleaning the candles in an old pickup. He didn't bring beer. There was no music playing. They worked in silence, but after 2 hours, Alex said, Did you know that Sarah couldn't stand the smell of gasoline? I didn't know. It's funny. I'm an amateur mechanic, she winced, but bought me new gloves so my hands wouldn't stink. Marcus froze, waiting for him to continue, but Alex was back in the details of the work. Still, this was the first voluntary piece of memory, and Marcus noted in his mind, the ice had cracked. In mid-March, Alex came home late and found a letter from the city administration in his desk, drawer the 6th request to accept an award medal for saving 3 teenagers a year ago. He tore up the paper and threw it in the trash. His phone flashed a message from Lily, call, urgent need. He washed down the notification with a swig of whiskey and hit the snooze button. That night, the nightmare returned. He stood in an old house, flames splashing up the stairs. On the 2nd floor, silhouettes of Sarah, Logan, Emma disappeared behind the smoke. He walked toward them, but the floorboards caved in. The heat cracked the skin of his hands. An explosion, and the noise stopped. Alex woke up in a cold sweat. The clock showed 2:17. He walked into Logan's nursery and turned on the star-shaped night light. The light tore through the darkness with yellow dots. Alex sat down and pulled the construction set box from under the bed. The dry plastic clinked. He closed his eyes and touched the pieces with his fingers, as if trying to remember his son's voice by touch. His breathing quickened, his chest tightened. His hands slid across the lid, turned the box over, and the pieces spilled out onto the carpet. Alex collapsed between them until his body was exhausted to the point of immobility. In the morning, Marcus called 7 times. Alex didn't answer. He lay among the plastic gears, staring at the ceiling. It was empty inside. In April, Lily showed up unannounced. She brought a hot chicken pie. Alex? The door was unlocked. She walked into the living room and saw empty bottles, a broken mug on the floor, and a scattered construction set. Alex was sitting in a chair, his gaze glassy. "You don't call," Lily said quietly. "I'm alive. That's enough. To live is more than to breathe. It's not for me to tell." She put the pie down, put the mug away, and opened the windows. "It smells like a grave here," she said. "There's a smell of truth here," he replied. Lily gathered her courage. "I made an appointment for you with a doctor, a trauma specialist. Cancel it." "No. Cancel it, or I'll quit my job and keep that smell in your apartment," he said evenly. "Is this a threat?" Warning. Lily wiped away her tears with the back of her hand. "Then at least talk to me without the doctor." We talked. "Alex, damn it. I lost my sister and my nephews too. It hurts me too. But I'm getting out." "Well done." She clenched her fists, but came closer, hugged him briefly and tightly. He did not hug her back. Lily stepped back, took the jacket. "I'll leave the pie. If you want, eat it. If not, throw it away. But I'll come tomorrow." She left, and the door slammed. Alex didn't move. Minutes passed. Then he got up and put the pie in the refrigerator, not because he was going to eat it, but so that the smell wouldn't fill the house. May, call to a multi-story apartment building. The fire started in the kitchen on the 7th floor. The residents left, but an elderly woman was believed to be still in the apartment. Alex marched up the stairs, inhaling smoke through a mask. Marcus followed behind. On the 6th floor landing, the ceiling collapsed. Marcus pushed Alex aside, and a hot panel hit him on the shoulder. Sparks flew off the mask. "It's okay, go on," Marcus yelled. "You will not pass." "Come in yourself. She's in the next apartment." Alex froze. The silhouettes of his family appeared before him again. He heard his own heavy breathing. For a second, his heart failed. Marcus grabbed his rifle. "Catch me, Alex. We can't waste time." Alex rushed forward. The apartment door gave way easily. It was dark inside. Smoke was churning the wallpaper. He found a woman by the closet. She was trying to find documents. Alex picked her up, carried her to the stairs, and handed her over to the medics. The stairwell burst into flames. In a tiny moment, Alex saw flames lick Marcus's helmet. He jerked, grabbed his comrade, and threw him down the steps. 5 seconds later, the wall collapsed, cutting off the path. When it was all over, Marcus was sitting next to the ambulance with a burned shoulder. "You saved me." "It happened by accident," Alex muttered. "No, brother, it's not accidental. At least say thank you to yourself." Alex was silent. Marcus sighed. "You know what? If I were buried today, I'd want you to at least talk to mine. Not be silent, like with ghosts." The words hit. Alex looked away. The medics asked if he needed help. He refused, but his hands were shaking so much that he couldn't light a cigarette. He didn't go home that night. He parked the truck by the dam, turned on his hazard lights, and walked out to the river. The water was sloshing with ice. The alien lights of the city reflected in broken lines. He pulled out his flask, but didn't take a sip. Instead, he splashed the bourbon into the river. "Sarah, Logan, Emma," he said, the words coming out in jerks. "I couldn't save you, and now I can't save myself. Tell me how." The answer was the splash of ice on concrete. Alex dropped to his knees. Tears came for the first time in 6 months, not in a shower, but in single drops. He let them come. The phone vibrated. A message from Lily. "I'm still here." He dialed the number. "Lil." "Alex?" Long pause. "Sorry." "For what?" "For silence. For everything. I'm tired." "I know." Can we talk tomorrow?" Lily sobbed and replied, "Of course, brother. Right now." He looked at the Black River. "Tomorrow. Today I need to finish one thing." He tore off the flask's cap and poured the rest of the alcohol into the water. Then he unclenched his fingers, and the metal hit the icy edge with a dull sound, sinking lower. Alex stood up. A cold wind blew, but for the first time in months, his skin didn't feel the burning inside. He returned at night. The hallway was dark. He turned on the light and noticed that the stool by the kitchen was gone. Lily had apparently taken it away for repairs. This did not anger him. He went into the bedroom, opened the drawer of the bedside table, and took out a pack of prescription sleeping pills, a stash for a rainy day. He took out a blister pack and looked at the white tablets. Then he tore open the package and shook the tablets into the toilet. He flushed the toilet and watched them disappear. There were 2 photographs hanging on the wall of the nursery. Alex picked them up, sat down on the floor, and leaned against the wall. "I'll come to the doctor tomorrow. It's just a promise for now. Do you hear?" The dim light of the star night light fell from the ceiling. The dots flickered, and for the first time he didn't think about a fire. He thought about how Emma counted the rays, as if she were looking for the constellation family among them. It was a May evening in Mayfield that smelled of damp earth and gasoline. The fire station radio came to life at 7:03 p.m. The dispatcher gave an address: an older neighborhood on West Hill, a timber frame house, a fire on the 2nd floor. Alex Reeves was already pulling on his jacket. The siren blared and the tanker tore through town, flashing red in the twilight. 2-story building, dilapidated, Marcus Vaughn called, flipping through a clipboard of blueprints. "The occupants are out, but a woman and child may be inside." Alex nodded, looking at the road. His fingers tightened around the carbine on his chest. A flash of Emma, hiding under a blanket during a thunderstorm, flashed through his mind. He shook his head, clearing the image. The house greeted them with a wall of smoke. Flames licked the 2nd-story windows, the glass cracking like breaking bones. Neighbors crowded behind the police tape, someone shouting, "Helen, Mia!" Alex stepped toward the porch, the mask already on his face. The air in the tank hissed like a snake. "Reeves, I'm with you," Marcus said, checking the hose. "Hold the ladder," Alex snapped. "If the ceiling collapses, you're outside." Marcus wanted to object, but Alex was already breaking in. The door gave way with a crunch. Inside, there was a black fog, the smell of burnt paint. The stairs to the 2nd floor creaked, the railings wobbled. He moved by touch, the beam of the flashlight cutting through the smoke. "Helen, Mia." His voice was muffled by the mask. A crack from above. The beam collapsed 3 steps away. Sparks lashed his sleeve. Alex crouched, his heart pounding. He heard a faint cough to the right, behind the bedroom door. He kicked the door. The hinges squealed. In the corner, under the bed, a girl of about 8 was huddled. Her eyes, huge as a deer's, looked at him. "Mia?" he asked, removing his mask so she could see his face. She nodded, coughing harder. Alex dropped to his knees. "I'll pull you out. Hold on to me, okay?" Mia grabbed his neck. He picked her up, light as a feather, and rushed toward the exit. The smoke was thickening. The heat was creeping under his jacket. On the stairs, his foot fell into a rotten step, but he held on. Outside, Marcus picked up Mia and handed her over to the medics. The girl was crying, but breathing. "Mom!" she shouted, pointing at the house. "She's there." Alex froze. His ears were ringing. He saw Sarah, not the real one, but like in a nightmare, a silhouette behind the smoke. Marcus grabbed his shoulder. "Chief, it's dangerous there. Wait for reinforcements." "No time," Alex said and dived back. The fire roared like a beast. The ceiling in the hallway sagged, the wallpaper bubbled. Alex made his way to the bedroom, where he found Mia. In the closet, against the wall, lay a woman, Helen, about 35 years old, unconscious. Her chest barely rose. He lifted her onto his shoulder, like a sack, and moved back. Flames licked his boot. The strap of the tank burned his skin. His head pounded. "Don't stop. Not now." The exit was 10 paces away when another beam collapsed. It caught his shoulder, and pain shot up to his elbow. Alex fell to one knee, but held Helen. He stood up, staggering, and lunged for the door. The fresh air hit his face. He collapsed on the grass, Helen rolled down next to him. The medics ran over. An oxygen mask fell on her face. "She's alive," the paramedic said. "You got here just in time, Reeves." Alex sat up, tore off his mask. His breath was ragged. He looked at Mia, sitting in the ambulance. She was clutching a dirty stuffed dog to her chest, looking at her mother. Their eyes met. Mia whispered, "Thank you." Alex nodded, but there was a lump in his throat. Marcus sank down next to him, clutching his burnt shoulder. "You're crazy, boss. But damn, you did it." "Work," Alex muttered, but his voice trembled. He stood up and walked towards the tank. He saw his face in the reflection on the side black with soot, eyes red. Behind him, Helen came to, coughed, called for Mia. The girl rushed to her, they hugged. Alex turned away. Something in his chest tightened, as if ice had cracked, but not melted. On the way back to the unit, he was silent. Marcus tried to joke. "If you hadn't come back for Helen, I would have gone myself. But, I'm not such a photogenic hero." Alex didn't answer. He was looking at the road, but he saw Mia, her eyes, the same as Emma's when she was afraid of the dark. In the locker room, he took off his uniform and threw it in the basket. On the bench lay a paper flower, the one he had taken from the car yesterday. He took it and squeezed it in his fist. In the evening, at home, Alex opened the refrigerator. The cold light of the bulb caught a familiar silhouette. Lily's pie was still on the top shelf, carefully wrapped in foil. He reached out, took it out, looked at it for a long time, carefully cut off a piece, put it on a plate, but he did not eat it. He sat down at the table, staring into space. Then, as if on automatic reflex, he pulled out his phone. On the screen was a message from Lily, "Call when you're ready." He hesitated for a few seconds, then pressed call. Beeps, and then a voice. "Alex?" Lily sounded wary. "Are you okay?" He swallowed. "Lil," the voice was hoarse, as if breaking through soot. "Alex," her voice became softer, closer. "What happened?" "Today, I saved a girl and her mother in a fire in an old house on Baker Street. I was the first one to get there." He closed his eyes. They were crying, hugging, alive. There was a pause. Lily could be heard exhaling. "That's good, Alex," she said finally. "That's really you." "I don't know if it's good." He looked away. "In the smoke, I saw them. Sarah, Emma, Logan. It was like they were there. Their faces, their screams, all over again." She didn't answer right away. Then quietly, "You don't have to carry everything alone. You were there, yes, but you did the best you could. What if it's not enough? What if it's always not enough?" He pressed his fingers into the phone. "I haven't slept for almost a day, Lil, but not from fatigue, from guilt. Alex, maybe this is a sign that you can still save, not just others, yourself too. You're alive, and you're still here." He closed his eyes. He was silent for a long time. Then, "I'm going to the doctor tomorrow, as I promised." A pause, a slight tremor in her voice. "I'm proud of you. Really, this is already a step. A big step." He looked at the pie and smiled faintly. "And maybe I'll even eat this pie. At least a piece." "He's been there for almost a week," she laughed. "If he outlives you, I'll start to worry." "Fair enough." He grinned too, for the first time in a long time, truly. He put the phone down. It was drizzling outside. Alex looked at the paper flower lying on the table. For the first time in months, he didn't reach for the bottle. Instead, he picked up the flower, smoothed out the petals, and placed it on the shelf next to the fireman's helmet. June arrived in Mayfield with sticky heat. Alex drank his morning coffee on the porch, watching the neighbor's dog dig a hole under the fence. The phone was silent, a rare day without a shift. He hadn't opened a bottle in a week, but his fingers still sought to squeeze something when his thoughts drifted to Sarah or the kids. He had been to the doctor yesterday, the first session, 40 minutes of silence and a few phrases about process. The doctor had said, "Start small. Do something for someone." Alex had shrugged, but the words had stuck in his head. At lunchtime, he stopped by Quick Mart to buy batteries for his flashlight. The store smelled of spicy sausage and microwaved hot dogs. An air conditioner hummed above the entrance, blowing dry air through the empty aisles. Helen stood at the checkout, hunched over, in a faded denim jacket with frayed elbows. Her hair was pulled back into a careless ponytail, and her cheeks were tired, like a lingering bruise. In the basket were milk, bread, and a packet of cheap cookies with a peeling logo. Next to her was Mia, wearing the same unicorn t-shirt she had on at the fire, tugging at the ear of her stuffed dog, as if hoping it would speak and say something encouraging. "This is the last change," Helen said quietly, shaking the contents of her purse into her palm. The coins clinked on the plastic of the cash register. The cashier, a young guy wearing a baseball cap with the words "Go Tigers" on it, was impatiently tapping his fingers on the terminal screen. "You only have 280, he said without looking. "Maybe you can get some cookies later." Helen bit her lip. "Mia, let's put a cookie aside, okay?" Mia frowned but said nothing. She only squeezed the dog tighter. "Mom, can I have candy? Just one. A small one." "Not today, dear," Helen replied. Her voice was soft, but there was that tiredness in it that does not go away after sleep. "Maybe tomorrow." Alex stepped closer, not knowing why. It was just. His legs carried him. Helen looked up, recognized. Her face tightened at first, as if she were preparing for a rebuke, then softened. "Mr. Reeves," she said, as if she were remembering not a name, but a feeling. "Just Alex," he nodded awkwardly. "How are you holding up?" "We live," she tried to smile, but the smile couldn't be held. "The city gave us an apartment on River Street. Temporary. But," she looked away, her voice lowered, "the generator there is acting up. The lights are flickering, and Mia, she doesn't like the dark." Mia glanced at him, then looked at the floor. The fingers on the stuffed dog were shaking. "I can take a look," he said almost reflexively. "Generators are my area." Helen blinked. "Oh no, you already. You saved us. I can't ask for anything else." "You don't ask. I'll do it myself." He shrugged, trying to sound casual, but his voice still sounded too soft. "Give me the address. I'll drop by tomorrow." She hesitated. "We don't want to be a burden," she said quietly. "People have it hard enough as it is." Mia tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, he's a fireman. He knows how to fix things, really. And he's kind." Helen looked at her daughter, then back at Alex. She took her bag off her shoulder, took out a receipt and a pen. She wrote down the address with a trembling hand, but the handwriting was neat, even beautiful. "Thank you, Alex. Really, I don't know how to get it all back." "No need to return anything," he said, taking the check. "Just tell me where you keep the coffee when I get there." Helen smiled faintly, this time for real. "Old Instant, but hot." "It couldn't be better," he nodded. The cashier cleared his throat. "Should I leave you some cookies or what?" Helen looked at the bag. "No, thank you." "I'll take it," Alex said, pulling out a bill. "For the cookie and for the candy. Mia, will you show me which one you want?" The girl's eyes widened. "The one with the cherry. The red one." "Excellent choice." The cashier scanned the purchases and handed the candy to Mia. The girl smiled for the first time in a long time and whispered to the dog. "See, I told you he was good." He nodded, took the batteries, and got out. In the truck, he gripped the steering wheel, wondering why he had gotten himself into this. But something light stirred in his chest, like the wind before rain. The next evening, Alex parked in front of a gray two-story house on River Street. The neighborhood was quiet but run down, peeling paint, rusty mailboxes. In the trunk was a toolbox and an old lantern. The generator sat in the yard, rusty and oil-stained, under an awning. Helen stood on the porch, wiping her hands on the apron. Mia sat on the steps, drawing on the concrete with chalk. "Good evening," Helen said, fiddling with the edge of her apron. "I made some coffee. Would you like some?" I won't refuse, Alex replied, putting the box on the ground. But first I'll have a look at this beast. He nodded towards the generator. Mia looked up. Her chalk stopped. It's loud, she said. And the light goes out. I don't like it when it's dark. Alex crouched down next to her to be at her level. You know, he hesitated, swallowing the word daughter. I knew a girl who was also afraid of the dark. We put a flashlight under the bed. It helped. Mia looked at him, her eyes serious. What if the flashlight breaks? Then I'll fix it. Or I'll bring a new one. Deal? She nodded, but did not let go of the dog. Helen watched from the porch, her gaze wary but not hostile. Alex opened the generator cover. Inside was a tangle of wires, a dirty carburetor, the smell of gasoline. He took out a screwdriver and began to disassemble. The sun was setting, the lantern cast a yellow circle on the grass. Mia crawled closer, watching. What's this? She asked, pointing to the spark plug. It's like the heart of a machine, Alex replied, not looking up. If it's dirty, the generator coughs. As a doctor for the world, Mia tilted her head. Exactly. He chuckled, for the first time that day. Have you ever fixed anything? No, but I drew a light bulb at school. It's yellow. A good color for the light, he said, wiping his hands with a rag. Helen came down the steps, holding 2 mugs of coffee. She handed one to Alex. Her fingers were thin, with short nails. He noticed an old bruise on her wrist, almost faded. Mia likes to ask questions, Helen said, sitting down on the step. Sometimes I don't have time to answer. That's okay, Alex said, taking a sip. The coffee was strong, with a slight bitterness. Questions are like sparks. They ignite ideas. She looked at him as if she was looking for a catch. Then she nodded. Do you do this often? Help people you've saved? Not really, he admitted. My work usually ends when the fire goes out. Then why us? Her voice was quiet but direct. Alex froze, the screwdriver hanging in his hand. He could have lied, but instead he said, I don't know. Maybe because Mia reminded me of someone. Helen looked down, clutching her mug. Mia was drawing nearby, humming something about the stars. The silence was thick, but not oppressive. The generator hummed as Alex tightened the bolt. The light in the windows of the house flickered and became more even. It worked, Mia shouted, clapping her hands. Just a test for now, Alex said. We need to clean a couple more. Helen looked at her daughter, then at Alex. We came here 2 months ago, she began, as if making up her mind. From Ohio, I left my husband. He wasn't a good man. Alex nodded without looking at her. He knew that such words were hard to say. Are you safe here? He asked, his voice even. For now, yes. The city helped and gave me this apartment. But I still check the locks. Every night. I understand, he said. And he did understand not her fear, but her habit of being in control. If anything happens, the fire department has connections. We can help with the alarm, or just be there. She looked at him, her eyes shining in the light of the lantern. Why are you so kind after what I heard about your family? Alex tensed. He didn't ask who told him. Mayfield was a small town. I don't know if I'm kind, he said, looking at the generator. I'm just trying to do what I can while I'm still breathing. Mia ran up holding a piece of chalk. Alex, draw something. She thrust the chalk at him as if it were an order. He took the chalk, sat down, and drew a simple star, uneven but bright. Is this like your night light? He asked. Almost, Mia said, but mine has rays. Lots of them. Then finish drawing, he suggested, returning the chalk. She set to work, her tongue hanging out in her eagerness. Helen smiled, for the first time truly. She doesn't trust easily, Helen said quietly. But with you, she's different. Children can sense, Alex replied, when someone isn't lying. He finished the generator and started it. The engine hummed smoothly, the lights in the house grew brighter. Mia clapped her hands, Helen stood up, brushing off her jeans. "How much do I owe you?" she asked. "Not at all. Consider it neighborly help." "You're not a neighbor," she objected, but warmly. "Then just help," he said, collecting his tools. Mia ran up and handed him a piece of paper, a drawing of a star, crooked, but with lots of rays. "This is for you," she said, "for the light." Alex took the drawing, his throat tightening. He remembered Emma's drawing of the dinosaur on the table. But for the first time, the memory didn't cut, it warmed him. "Thank you, Mia," he said, his voice slightly hoarse. "I'll hang it at home." Helen walked him to the truck. The night was warm, the stars twinkling over the rooftops. "Alex," she said as he opened the door, "if you want coffee, without the generators, come on over. We'll be glad to see you." He looked at her. Her face was open but cautious, like a door ajar on a chain. "Maybe I'll drop by," he replied, "if Mia draws more stars." She laughed, quietly but sincerely. Alex climbed into the truck, placing Mia's drawing on the passenger seat. On the way back, he turned on the radio for the first time in months. It was an old song about the road and home. He didn't sing, but he listened. At home, he pinned the star drawing to the refrigerator next to Sarah's note. His phone blinked. "Lily, how's the doctor?" he wrote. "Been there." And "fixed the generator for the ones I saved." The answer came a second later. "Proud of you, brother." Alex lay down without turning on the light. For the first time, the nightmare didn't come. Instead, he saw stars, not the ones in the nursery, but drawn in chalk, with extra rays. He closed his eyes and for the first time felt like he was breathing a little easier. It was a muggy July afternoon in Mayfield, the air shimmering off the asphalt. Alex Reeves sat at the firehouse, checking the valves on his hoses. The radio was silent, but the silence was oppressive. In recent weeks, he'd found himself thinking about Helen and Mia more often than he'd expected. Their temporary apartment on River Street was cramped, with shaky wiring, and Alex knew it was no place for a child afraid of the dark. Yesterday, Marcus had taken one look at his frowning face and said, "Chief, you can't save everyone, but you can stop hiding." Alex had waved it off, but the words had stung. At home, in a drawer of papers, were the keys to Aunt Marge's house on Oak Lane. She had died 2 years ago, leaving Alex an old cottage with a shabby porch and a garden overgrown with dandelions. He hadn't been there since Marge's funeral, but he knew the house was solid, with good wiring and windows that caught the morning light. The perfect place for Helen and Mia to stay until they got on their feet. The idea had come suddenly, like a spark, and he hadn't put it out. He called Helen from his work phone, standing at the unit's window. Outside the glass, a boy was riding a bicycle, ringing a bell. "Helen, this is Alex," he began, his voice slightly hoarse with awkwardness. "Oh, Alex." Her tone was surprised but warm. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, Look, I've been thinking. I have a house. Empty. Belonged to my aunt. It's nicer than your apartment. Spacious, bright. It will be safer for Mia." Pause. He heard her exhale. "Alex, this is too much. We can't just—" "It's not charity," he interrupted, trying to sound even. "The house is still there. It's collecting dust. You'll help me if you take it over. Cleaning, lawn, all that." "Are you sure?" Her voice trembled, as if she was afraid to believe. "I'm sure. I can show it tomorrow. If it fits, move in." "I don't know how to thank you," she said quietly. "Mia will be delighted. She's still talking about your star." Alex smiled, although she didn't see it. "Then we have an agreement. I'll come by in the morning." He hung up, feeling something strange stir in his chest, not pain, but lightness. But then it came flooding back, Marge's house. There he'd played with Logan and Emma, there Sarah had baked Thanksgiving pie. He clenched his fist, pushing the images away, and went back to his sleeves. Like if betrayal is not about you. And in order not to miss the next story, be sure to subscribe. We appreciate each of you. The next morning, Alex pulled up outside Helen's apartment. She was waiting on the porch, wearing a light dress and sneakers, and Mia was sitting next to him, swinging her legs. The girl was holding a unicorn backpack with a stuffed dog sticking out of it. "Ready?" Alex asked, getting out of the pickup. Mia couldn't sleep, she was so worried, Helen said, smiling. "Right, dear." "Is there a garden there?" Mia asked, her eyes shining. "Can I plant flowers?" "There's a garden," Alex answered, opening the back door. "And there are flowers. Aunt Marge loved daisies." Mia climbed into the car. Helen sat in the front, her hands fiddling with the seat belt. "Are you sure you don't mind?" she asked, looking out the window. "This is your family home." "It's not family," Alex said, a little more sharply than he intended. "It's just a place, a good place." She nodded, not pressing. Mia was humming something about the stars, and Alex turned on the radio to fill the silence. It was an old country song about the drive home. He found himself drumming his fingers on the steering wheel. The house on Oak Lane greeted them with a creaking gate. The white paint on the facade was peeling, but the windows were sparkling clean. A neighbor, Mrs. Clare, was looking after the house at Alex's request. Dandelions were blooming in the garden, their yellow heads swaying in the wind. Mia jumped out of the car, her backpack bouncing on her back. "Mom, look! Flowers!" she shouted, running across the grass. Helen stepped out, her gaze sweeping around the house. She clutched her bag as if she was afraid it would all disappear. "Beautiful," she said quietly, "just like in the books." Alex pulled out his keys, the old chamomile keychain jingling. He opened the door, and the scent of lavender hit him in the face. Aunt Marge always kept sachets in the closets. His throat tightened. He stepped inside, the floorboards creaking under his boots. Flashback, summer, 3 years ago. Logan, wearing shorts and carrying a plastic sword, is running around the living room. "Dad, I'm a pirate. Save the treasure." Emma, sitting on the carpet, is drawing a ship with markers. "Pirates don't run around the house, Logan. You'll break the vase." Sarah laughs from the kitchen, her hair covered in flour. "Alex, tell your pirate the treasure is a pie, and it's in the oven." Alex grabs Logan and throws him to the ceiling. The boy squeals with delight. Emma frowns. "Dad, now draw me a shark." Alex blinked, clearing the vision. Helen and Mia were standing in the living room, looking around. The old furniture, the couch, the rocking chair, the wooden table was covered with sheets. Light poured through the windows, casting shadows on the floral wallpaper. "It's cozy here," Helen said, touching the back of the chair. "But dusty. I can clean it." "Take your time," Alex replied. "Take a look around first. I'll check the wiring and the faucet." Marge complained that it was leaking. Mia ran up holding a dandelion. "This is for you," she said, holding out the flower. "For being here." Alex picked up a dandelion. Its furry head tickled his fingers. He remembered Emma bringing him similar ones, calling them Earth stars. "Thank you, Mia," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "Come on, I'll show you your room." He led them upstairs, the stairs creaking like an old song. In Mia's bedroom, there was a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a small table. The window looked out onto the garden. The curtains were blue, with stars embroidered on them. "Stars!" Mia exclaimed, running to the window. "Mom, is this my room?" "If you want," Helen said, looking at Alex. "It's perfect." "Then it's decided," he said, putting down the toolbox. "I'll start with the crane. You look around." He went down to the bathroom, where the old faucet was dripping, leaving rust stains. He took out a wrench and set to work. The sound of metal on metal was soothing. Spring, 2 years ago. Logan, in rubber boots, is standing in the garage, holding a flashlight. "Dad, why are the lug nuts so stubborn?" Alex, under the car, laughs. "Because they're like you, they don't want to listen." Logan frowns. "I do, sometimes." Sarah walks in, holding mugs of cocoa. "You too, if you break my truck, you'll walk." She winks, and Logan chuckles. Alex climbs out, kisses her cheek. "You'd miss us, honey." The key slipped from his hand, clanking against the tiles. Alex cursed under his breath. Mia appeared in the doorway, holding a stuffed dog. "Are you angry?" she asked, tugging at the toy's ear. "Not on you," he said, picking up the key. "On the faucet. It's as old as this house." "Can you fix it?" Her eyes were serious, like a doctor examining a patient. "I can," he replied, tightening the nut. "See, it doesn't drip now." Mia nodded but didn't leave. She sat on the edge of the tub, swinging her legs. "Do you always fix things?" she asked. "When I can," he said, wiping his hands with a rag. "And you? What do you like to do?" "Draw," she replied, "and read about dinosaurs. They're cool." Alex froze. Dinosaurs. Emma loved them, especially the Triceratops. "Cool," he agreed, his voice slightly hoarse. "Which is your favorite?" "Velociraptor. It's fast. And yours?" "Triceratops," he said without thinking. "It has horns like a shield." Mia smiled as if he had passed the test. Helen walked in holding a broom. "Mia, don't distract Alex," she said. "He's working." "It's okay," Alex said, standing up. "She's a good helper." Helen looked at him, her gaze softening. "I started cleaning the kitchen," she said. "There's an old radio there. Does it work?" "It must be," he replied. "I'll go and have a look." The kitchen smelled of dust and lemon cleaner. The radio sat on the windowsill, worn, with a cracked handle. Alex turned it on, and after a hiss, a melody began to play, an old ballad about love and sunset. Flashback autumn, 4 years ago. Sarah is dancing in the kitchen, barefoot in his old t-shirt. The radio is playing the same song. "Alex, come here, hero, dance with me." He grumbles, "I'm a fireman, not a dancer." But she tugs at his hand, and he gives in. They dance, laughing, until Logan runs in. "Ugh, you're like a movie," Emma giggles from behind the couch. "Dad, you stepped on Mommy's foot," Sarah whispers in his ear. "You're my hero, even with 2 left feet." Alex turned off the radio. The silence hit like a cold wind. Helen noticed his gaze. "Is everything okay?" she asked quietly. "Yes," he lied, looking away. "Just dust." She nodded without insisting. Mia ran in, holding a box of pencils. "Mom, can I draw?" she asked. "Of course," Helen said, "just not on the walls." "I'm on paper," Mia said indignantly, sitting down at the table. Alex went back to work, checking the outlets. The house was alive with Helen sweeping the floor, Mia humming, pencils crinkling. But every sound, every smell, pulled him back. He found an old tin can in the closet. Marge kept candy in it. Logan had stolen a lollipop from it once, and Emma had given him away because he shared. By evening, the house looked cleaner. Helen had cooked macaroni and cheese, a simple dish, but the smell filled the kitchen with warmth. She set out 3 plates. "Alex, eat with us," she said without looking at him. "It's the least I can do." "I'm not hungry," he began, but Mia interrupted. "You have to. Mom makes the best pasta." He sat down, feeling like a stranger. Mia was chatting about dinosaurs. Helen was smiling, but her fingers were fiddling with her napkin. Alex ate slowly, each bite an effort. "Have you been here often?" Helen asked as Mia ran for water. "At my aunt's." "Sometimes," he said. "With family. The kids loved the garden. Logan built forts, Emma painted." He fell silent. Helen looked at him, her eyes soft but attentive. "They told me about your loss," she said quietly. "The town's talking. I can't imagine how you're coping." "I can't cope," he replied, looking at his plate. "Just moving." She nodded as if she understood. "Me too," she said. "After him, I left because I was afraid for Mia. But every day I wait for him to find us." "He won't find it," Alex said, his voice becoming firmer. "If anything happens, call me. I'm nearby." She looked at him, her lips trembling. "You don't have to, Alex. You're already doing too much." "Not much," he said. "It helps me." Mia returned holding a glass. "Alex, are you staying?" she asked. It's dark at night, and I don't like it. I'll be back tomorrow, he said, and I'll bring a flashlight, the brightest one. She nodded, but her eyes were serious. Helen cleared the plates, Alex helped, although she protested. In the living room, he noticed a drawing on the table Mia had left it. A man in a red helmet with a cape flying over the city. The caption, Super Alex. It's you, Mia said, appearing next to him. You saved us, like a hero. Alex took the drawing, his throat tightening. He saw Emma, her dinosaur, her signature, to Dad. But this drawing was different, alive, warm. Thank you, Mia, he said, his voice hoarse. This is the best hero I've ever seen. She smiled, hugged his leg. He froze, then put his hand on her shoulder. Helen stood in the doorway, her eyes shining. Time for bed, honey, she said. Alex, thank you for everything. He nodded, clutching the drawing. On the porch, he inhaled the night air. The stars were as bright as Emma's nightlight. He climbed into the truck, placing the drawing on the seat. At home, he taped it to the refrigerator next to the dandelion and Sarah's note. His phone blinked Lily. How are you? He texted, helped Helen and Mia. They're at Marge's house. And I'm okay. He lay down, looking at the ceiling. The nightmare did not come. Instead, he saw shadows on the wall, not fire, but stars drawn by a child's hand. Dark clouds hung over Mayfield like a heavy blanket about to burst. Alex Reeves drove his pickup down Oak Lane, squinting in the gray light. The back of the truck was filled with tools and the sheet metal he'd taken to fix Marge's awning. Helen had called that morning, her voice tired but warm. Rain is coming, and the awning is leaking like a sieve. If you're not busy, come by. He wasn't busy. His shift had ended at 7 in the morning, and the house on Willow Lane greeted him with a silence that made him want to run. He parked outside the house where Helen and Mia now lived. The dandelion garden was glistening with morning dew. The porch smelled of fresh paint. Helen had painted it last week. Alex got out his toolbox, his shoulders aching from the day before. The fire in the garage on the outskirts had been small, but the smoke had clung to his skin, and even after his shower, he could still taste it. Helen stepped out onto the porch, wearing jeans and a gray sweatshirt, her hair pulled back into a messy bun. She held a mug of coffee, steam rising in the cool air. You're just in time, she said, smiling. Mia wanted to go out and paint, but the clouds are scaring her. No wonder, Alex replied, setting the box down on the grass. The weather's lousy. Where's the shed? Back by the barn, she said, pointing. I tried putting buckets under it, but it was like trying to put out a fire with a spoon. He chuckled for the first time that day. Her directness reminded him of Sarah, not the one in his nightmares, but the one who teased him about the over-salted soup. I'll go and have a look, he said, walking around the house. If it starts to rain, call Mia to shelter. Helen nodded, but her gaze lingered on him. He noticed, but pretended not to see, focusing on the rusty awning. The iron was rotted at the edges, water dripping onto the wooden box where Mia kept her crayons. Alex pulled out a screwdriver, starting to remove the old bolts. The sky had darkened, and the wind rustled the leaves. Helen appeared with another mug of coffee and handed it to him. Here you go. You look like you haven't slept in a week. Go hire a month, he said, accepting the mug. The coffee was hot, with a slight hint of cinnamon. He took a sip, feeling the warmth spread through his chest. Fires? She asked, leaning against the wall of the barn. The same ones, he replied, tightening a new bolt. And all sorts of other things. She looked at him, her eyes attentive but not intrusive. Are you always this? Closed off? She asked. Or is it just with me? Alex froze, the screwdriver hanging in his hand. He could have laughed it off, but her tone was too sincere. It's not you, he said, looking at the awning. It's just habit. I understand, she replied, but her voice wavered. I have habits too. Checking locks, counting the steps to the door. Silly, but it helps. He nodded, not looking at her. He knew what she meant, her ex, the shadow that still hung over her. The first drop of rain fell on his hand, cold as a needle. "You'd better go inside," he said. "It's going to rain now." "And you?" she asked without moving. "I'll be quick," he muttered, but the sky decided otherwise. The rain poured down in buckets, drowning out everything. Drops pounded the canopy, the grass instantly became slippery. Alex cursed, grabbing his tools. "Drop it!" Helen shouted over the noise. "Let's get to the porch." They ran for the house, but the porch was too far away. Helen pointed to an old oak tree in the garden, its thick canopy providing some shelter. They stood under it, soaking wet. Helen's hair was plastered to her face, her sweatshirt was dark. Alex shook the water off his jacket, but it was no use. "Damn," he muttered, looking at the sky. "I should have checked the forecast." Helen laughed, unexpectedly and easily. "You're a fireman, not a meteorologist," she said, wringing out her sleeve. "Although, it's even beautiful. Rain." He looked at her, her face glistening with water, her eyes alive despite her fatigue. Something stirred in his chest that he didn't want to name. "You're strange," he said, but there was no malice in his voice. "And you don't?" she retorted, squinting. "You carry lamps for Mia, fix awnings, and you yourself, it's like you're hiding." "Hiding?" he frowned, crossing his arms. "From what?" "From myself," she said, and her voice became quieter but firmer. "I see, Alex. You help us, you do all this, but you don't live. You're like a shadow." The words hit him like the wind. He wanted to brush them away, but the rain, her gaze, the silence between them, everything held him in place. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice growing colder. "I know," she said, stepping closer. "I was there. When I left him, I thought it was over. I didn't sleep, I didn't eat, I just checked to make sure the door was locked. But Mia, she made me move. And you? Who's making you move?" Alex clenched his fists, feeling the rain trickle down his neck. He saw Sarah not in the nightmare, but on their last morning, singing in the kitchen while Logan and Emma argued over toast. The memory was so vivid he could almost smell the coffee. "I have no one," he said, and the words came out more harshly than he intended. "And I'm not hiding. I'm doing what I can." Helen looked at him, her eyes shining, either from the rain or from tears. "You're lying," she said quietly. "I've seen the way you look at Mia, the way you fix her things. You don't just fix them, you save them. But who's going to save you, Alex?" He stepped back, the oak branches brushing against his shoulder. Her words were too close, too true. He felt the walls he had spent months building cracking. "I don't need saving," he said, his voice hoarse. I can't." "Why?" she asked, not looking away. "Because you're afraid. I was afraid too. Afraid to trust, afraid he'd find us. But I'm here, and you're here. We're both broken, but alive." "Don't compare," he snapped, and there was anger in his voice, but underneath it, there was pain. "You don't know what I lost. Sarah, Logan, Emma, they were everything, and I didn't save them. Don't you dare tell me that I can just live." Helen flinched but didn't back away. She clenched her hands, her fingers trembling. "I'm not saying easy," she said. "I know it's not easy. When he beat me, I thought it was my fault, that I deserved it. But Mia, she looked at me, and I knew I had to get out. For her. And you save others, but not yourself. What makes you think you don't deserve this?" Alex turned away, looking at the wet grass. The rain poured down, drowning out everything but her voice. He saw Sarah, her laughter, her hand on his shoulder. He saw Emma drawing dinosaurs, Logan building a robot, and he hated himself because Helen was right. He was afraid. Afraid that if he allowed himself to feel, the memory of them would fade. "I can't," he said, almost whispering. If I start, it's like betraying them. They're dead, and I'm here. With you. With Mia, it's not right." Helen stepped toward him, her sneakers squelching in the mud. She touched his arm lightly, but he tensed as if he'd been burned. "It's not a betrayal," she said, her voice shaking. "To live is not to forget. I haven't forgotten what happened, but I'm learning to breathe. And you can too. Not for me, not for Mia, for yourself." He looked at her, her wet hair, her eyes full of pain and hope. She was too close at that moment, not physically, but to what he was hiding. He pulled away, stepping out from under the oak tree into the rain. "That's enough," he said, his voice firm but empty. "I'm not who you think I am. I'm helping because I can, not because you need me." Helen froze, her hand hanging in the air. Rain ran down her face, but she did not move. "Okay," she said finally, her voice quieter. "I won't push, but I see you, Alex, even if you don't want to." He didn't answer. He turned and walked toward the truck, feeling the water soaking his boots. The door slammed and the engine roared. He drove away without looking back. In the rearview mirror, Marge's garden dissolved into the downpour. At home, he dropped his wet jacket on the floor. The kitchen smelled of dust and coffee he hadn't finished this morning. On the fridge was a drawing of Mia's, a superhero in a red helmet. He looked at it, his throat tightening. Helen was right, and it was killing him. He wanted to live, but every step toward it felt like a betrayal. He opened the drawer where the bottle of bourbon had once been, but it was empty. He had thrown it out months ago. The phone blinked a message from Lily. "How are you, brother?" He didn't answer. Instead, he sat down at the table, resting his head on his hands. The rain pounded the windows like steps he didn't dare take. The light in the house on Oak Lane was soft, coming from an old lamp over the kitchen table. Alex Reeves sat with a mug of cold tea, listening to Mia hum in the living room as she painted another star. Helen washed the dishes, her movements rhythmic, almost soothing. The evening seemed ordinary, but Alex felt a tension building in his chest, like a firefighter's call. Today was the anniversary a year since Sarah, Logan, and Emma had left. He hadn't told anyone, not even Lily, but the date burned like coal under his skin. Mia ran into the kitchen, holding a drawing of a fire truck drawn in red marker. "Alex, look, it's yours," she said, beaming. "It's putting out the fire." He forced himself to smile, but the drawing struck him. Logan had once drawn a similar one with the crooked caption, "Hero Dad." "Cool, Mia," he said, his voice hoarse. "Just like the real thing." Helen dried her hands on a towel and looked at him. Her gaze was as attentive as it had been that evening in the rain. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. "You look far away." "Tired," he lied, looking away. "Long shift." She nodded, but didn't believe it. Mia tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, can I draw some more?" "Of course, dear," Helen said. "Just don't paint on the sofa." Mia ran away, and Alex stood up, feeling the walls closing in. The smell of soap, Helen's voice, the children's laughter, everything was too familiar, too alive. "I'll go check the canopy," he muttered, grabbing his jacket. "It might be leaking again." "Alex," Helen began, but he had already left. Outside, the air was cool, the sky clear. He climbed into the truck, gripped the steering wheel. An anniversary. A year without them. He hadn't planned on drinking, he hadn't picked up a bottle since that day by the river. But his feet led him to the convenience store on the corner. Whiskey, cheap, in a plastic bottle. He bought it without looking at the cashier and walked back to the house on Willow Lane. There, in the empty kitchen, he unscrewed the cap and took his first sip. The liquid burned his throat, but the pain was different, manageable. By 10 o'clock, the bottle was half empty. Alex sat on the couch, looking at Mia's drawing pinned to the fridge. His phone vibrated. "Marcus. Chief, where are you?" Helen called. "She's worried." Alex didn't answer. He took another sip, feeling his anger rising like smoke. The door creaked. Marcus walked in without knocking, his boots leaving dirty marks on the floor. His face was serious, but his voice was soft. "Hey, brother, what's up?" he said, looking at the bottle. "You've stopped." "None of your business," Alex snapped, putting the bottle on the table. "Go away." Marcus crossed his arms, not moving. I'm not leaving, he said. Helen called and said you left without explaining. Mia wants to know where you are. What's wrong, Alex? Nothing, he barked, standing up. The room shook, but he held on. I don't have to answer. Not to you, not to her. Marcus stepped closer, his voice firmer. Look, I know it's a tough day, anniversary. But you're not alone, brother. We're here. Helen, Mia, me. Don't push us away. Don't you dare, Alex growled, clenching his fists. You don't know what it's like. To lose everything. I don't want your pity. Or hers. That's not a pity, Marcus said, raising his voice. That's caring, damn it. You're drowning, Alex, and you're dragging everyone down with you. Helen trusts you. Mia sees you as a hero. And you're like this, drinking and hiding. Shut up, Alex yelled, throwing the bottle at the wall. It shattered, whiskey spilling across the floor. I'm not a hero. I didn't save them. Sarah, Logan, Emma. I couldn't, you understand, and I can't save anyone. The door creaked again. Helen stood in the doorway, holding Mia's hand. Her face was pale, her eyes wide. Mia was clutching a stuffed dog, her lips trembling. Alex, Helen said, her voice shaking. We were looking for you. He froze, his anger turning to shame like cold water. Mia looked at him, her eyes full of fear, like that night in the fire. Go away, he said, but his voice was empty. Both of you. Helen shook her head, her gaze hardening. You're not okay, she said. I thought we were friends, but this. She looked at the broken bottle. I can't put Mia through this. Then get lost, he said, turning away. Take her and get lost. Mia sobbed. Helen squeezed her hand and turned to Marcus. Marcus, take us, she said quietly. The apartment on River Street is still available. Marcus nodded, giving Alex a look of disappointment. Let's go, he said, opening the door. Helen looked at Alex one last time. I wanted to help, she said, but you have to want to. They were gone. The door slammed like a gunshot. Alex collapsed on the couch, the smell of whiskey choking him. He closed his eyes, and darkness swallowed him. The night was heavy, like smoke. Alex lay on the floor, unable to reach his bed. Sleep came unnoticed, soft but bright, like light through haze. He was standing in the garden of the house on Willow Lane, but the garden was different, the grass brighter, the dandelions shining like stars. Logan and Emma were sitting on the swing, their laughter ringing like bells. Sarah stood next to him, her hair shining like the morning before the accident. Dad, Logan shouted, jumping off the swing. Look, I caught a bug. Emma ran up, holding a drawing of a dinosaur with a crown. This is for you, she said, smiling, because you're our hero. Alex dropped to his knees, his hands shaking. He wanted to hug them, but he was afraid they would disappear. I couldn't, he whispered. I didn't save you. Sarah approached, her eyes warm and non-judgmental. You did everything you could, she said, touching his shoulder. We're here, always. Logan took his hand, his fingers small but strong. You're still alive, Dad, he said, live for us. Emma nodded, her pigtails bouncing. And draw stars, she added, like me. The light grew brighter, the garden dissolved. Alex wanted to shout, to hold them back, but their voices echoed, live for us. He woke up, gasping, his cheeks wet with tears. The clock showed 4:17 and the smell of whiskey still hung in the air. He stood up, his legs shaking. The kitchen was a mess, broken bottles, a puddle on the floor. He picked up a broom and began to clean, his movements mechanical, as if he were on a call. Mia's drawing of a superhero stared at him from the refrigerator. He stopped, feeling shame tightening in his chest. Helen, Mia, Marcus, he pushed them all away. But the children's words burned in his sleep. Live for us. He sat down at the table and opened his phone. A message from Lily. Call if you need me. He dialed her number without thinking. Lil, he said when she answered, her voice sleepy. Alex, Shit, are you okay? She woke up immediately. No, he admitted, for the first time in a year. I got drunk. I snapped at Marcus. Helen left. I ruined everything. Pause. Lily exhaled. You're calling, she said. That's a step. What happened? Anniversary, he said, his voice breaking. I couldn't handle it. But I dreamed about them. Logan, Emma, they told me to live for them. Oh, brother, Lily said, her voice breaking. They're right. You don't betray them by living. You carry them with you. He clutched the phone, tears burning his eyes. I don't know how, he whispered. Start small, she said. Apologize. To Marcus, Helen. And go back to the doctor. I'll go with you if you want. He nodded, although she couldn't see. Okay, he said. Tomorrow. He hung up and stood up. The morning was gray but clean. He washed the floor and threw away the broken glass. He carefully took down Mia's drawing and placed it on the table. He knew he had to regain her trust, and Helen's too. But first, himself. The morning in Mayfield was gray, with low clouds clinging to the tops of the pine trees. Alex Reeves sat at the kitchen table, holding a mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. On the table was a stack of paper, cheap and jagged, and a ballpoint pen he'd found in a drawer. Next to it was Mia's drawing of a superhero in a red helmet and an old note from Sarah, by Milk Hero. He looked at them, feeling his heart tighten, not with pain, but with something new, the desire to talk. Yesterday's session with Dr. Brown was long. For the first time, Alex had spoken. He had told of the breakdown, the bottle, the way he had pushed Marcus and Helen away, and of the dream Logan and Emma, their voices, live for us. The doctor, gray-haired and tired-eyed, had said, say goodbye to them. Not for them, for yourself. Write a letter if it's hard to talk. Alex had shrugged, but the idea had stuck, like a spark in dry grass. He picked up the pen and moved the sheet. His hand was shaking, the ink left a blot. He began to write without thinking, letting the words flow like water. Sarah, I don't know how to begin. It's been a year, and I still wait for you to walk into the kitchen, laughing at my pancakes. You always said I flipped them too soon. I miss your voice, the way you hummed even when you were mad. I miss Logan, his endless questions about robots. I miss Emma, her drawings, her triceratops. I miss us. I didn't save you. It kills me every day. I was a fireman, a hero, you called me, but I didn't make it that day. I see you in the fire, even though I know it wasn't. An accident, the cops said. Quick, no pain. But I don't believe it. I should have been there, holding your hand, holding them. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm sorry I let you down. I tried to live the life you wanted. I helped Helen and Mia. You would have loved them. Mia draws like Emma, asks questions like Logan. Helen, she's strong like you. But I pushed them away. I got drunk, lost my temper, like a coward. I was afraid that if I loved them, I would forget you. But I won't. Never. You always said, Alex, don't keep it all inside. Speak up. I didn't listen. Now I do. I want to live, Sarah, not for myself, but for you. Logan and Emma told me in a dream, live for us. I'm trying. It hurts, but I'm trying. I love you. I always will. But I'm saying goodbye. Not because I want to, but because I have to. You're in my heart, but I can't be a shadow anymore. I'll burn this letter by the lake where we were happy. Let the smoke take away my pain. I'll live, Sarah, for you. You're Alex. He stopped, the pen falling from his fingers. Tears dripped onto the paper, smearing the ink. He reread it, each word cutting but also freeing. A bird was chirping outside the window, the sound so ordinary it seemed alien. He folded the letter and shoved it into his jeans pocket. He took a box of matches from the drawer, an old one with the Riverside Diner logo. His jacket smelled of smoke from his last shift, but he didn't change it. The pickup was waiting outside the house, the engine purring like an old friend. The road to Haven Lake was narrow, winding through pine forest. Alex turned on the radio, but turned it off when a love song began. He wanted silence. The lake appeared around the bend, smooth as glass, surrounded by willows whose branches touched the water. An old pier, darkened by time, creaked in the wind. He and Sarah had picnicked here, Logan throwing rocks to make a pancake, Emma collecting shells. Alex parked at the water's edge, picked up a letter and matches, and got out. The air smelled of seaweed and damp earth. Frogs croaked somewhere in the reeds, their chorus soft, almost comforting. He walked along the pier, the boards sagging under his boots. There was a bench at the end of the pier where Sarah liked to read while the children splashed. He ran his hand along the back, feeling the rough paint. A memory flashed like a still from a movie. Flashback, summer, 3 years ago. Sarah sits on a bench, wearing a straw hat, a book in her lap. Logan, knee-deep in water, calls out, "Dad, look, I caught a frog." Emma, with a bucket, frowns. "It's slippery, let go." Sarah laughs, her voice ringing. "Alex, your son will be a biologist and your daughter will be a lawyer." He winks, "And you'll remain the queen of picnics." She throws a pine cone at him, and the children giggle. The sun sets, painting the lake gold. Alex blinked, clearing the image. The wind was chilling his cheeks, but he didn't notice. He pulled out the letter and unfolded it. The paper was wrinkled, the ink slightly faded. He reread the last line, "I will live, Sarah, for you." His throat tightened, but he didn't cry. It wasn't about tears, it was about taking a step forward. He squatted at the edge of the pier and took out his matches. The first one broke, the second one wouldn't light. He cursed under his breath, but the third match flared up, a tiny flame flickering in the wind. He held it to the corner of the letter. The paper caught slowly, the flame licking the edge, blackening the words. He held the letter until the flames reached his fingers, then dropped it into the water. The ashes swirled, some settling on the lake, some blown away by the wind. The flame died out, leaving the smell of burnt paper. He looked at the water, where the ash was dissolving. The lake was calm, reflecting the gray sky. He waited for pain, but instead something else came: lightness, as if the stone he carried in his chest had become smaller. Not gone, but lighter. "I love you," he whispered, not knowing to whom, Sarah, the children, or himself. He stood up, shoved his hands in his pockets. The pier creaked as he walked back. The frogs continued to croak, and the wind rustled the willows. He got into the truck, but didn't start the engine. He pulled out his phone, opened the text from Lily. "Where are you? Call." He dialed her number. "Lil," he said when she answered. "Alex, shit, I was worried." Her voice was sharp but warm. "Are you okay?" "Yes," he said, and for the first time it wasn't a lie. "I wrote a letter to Sarah, burned it by the lake." Pause. Lily exhaled. "Oh, brother," she said, "this is a big step." "I don't know if it was big," he replied, looking at the water, "but I felt them, like they let me go." "They are always with you," she said, "but you must live. They would like to." "I know," he said. "I will try. I will talk to Marcus tomorrow. And to Helen. I was an idiot." "You were human," Lily corrected. "They'll understand. Helen called, asking about you. Mia misses you." He nodded, although she couldn't see. "Thanks, Lil," he said. "I'll call." He hung up the phone and started the engine. On the way back, he turned on the radio. The song was old, about the road and a new day. He didn't sing, but he listened. At home, he lay down without turning on the light. For the first time in a year, he slept lightly, without a fire. The autumn wind blew leaves across the sidewalks of Mayfield, their rustle mixing with the distant whistle of a train. Alex Reeves stood by his truck, parked outside the house on Willow Lane, clutching his keys so tightly that the metal bit into his palm. The morning after he burned the letter by the lake had been clear but cold, the air smelling of damp and pine needles. He felt cleaner, but not whole, like a house after a fire, where the walls were up, but the inside was empty. Sleeping with Logan and Emma, their words to "live through us" and talking to Lily yesterday had given him a push. He couldn't hide anymore. Helen and Mia deserved an apology, and he wanted to earn their trust back. even if that scared him more than any fire. He pulled out his phone and dialed Marcus. They hadn't spoken since the breakdown, and Alex knew the friendship had suffered. Marcus answered on the third ring, his voice tired. "Boss," he said, without his usual warmth. "What do you want?" "Marcus," Alex began, his voice hoarse. "I was an idiot. I'm sorry. I need to find Helen and Mia. Do you know where they are?" The pause was heavy. Alex heard Marcus exhale. "Are you serious?" he asked. "After everything?" "Seriously," Alex said. "I'm trying to improve. For them. For myself." Marcus paused, then his voice softened. "They're at New Hope, the women's shelter on Broad Street. Helen volunteers there. But Alex, don't screw this up again. Mia doesn't deserve this." "I won't screw this up," Alex said, feeling the words burn. "Thanks, brother." "Uh-huh," Marcus muttered. "Call me if, well, you know." Alex hung up and got into his truck. The drive to the shelter was short, but each stoplight seemed like an eternity. He remembered the breakdown, the broken bottle, the fear in Mia's eyes, Helen's disappointment, and the lake, the ashes of the letter, carried away by the water. He gripped the wheel, determined to fight fear. The New Hope shelter was a two-story building with peeling yellow paint and windows covered with children's drawings. There were plastic chairs in the yard, one with a forgotten teddy bear. Alex parked, wiping his sweaty palms on his jeans. The smell of soup and coffee wafted through the open door, mixing with the noise of voices and children's laughter. He stepped inside, his heart pounding as if he were entering a burning house. The lobby was crowded, boxes of clothes, an old sofa, a bulletin board with a schedule. The woman behind the counter, in a knitted sweater, looked up. "How can I help you?" she asked, her voice warm but businesslike. "I'm looking for Helen," Alex said, feeling like an outsider. "Helen and her daughter, Mia." "Helen's in the kitchen," the woman said, pointing down the hallway. "And Mia's probably in the playroom. Are you a friend?" "Yes," he said, though the word seemed too big. "Friend." She nodded, turning back to her papers. Alex followed the clatter of dishes down the hall. The kitchen was spacious, with worn linoleum and a long table. Helen stood at the stove, stirring something in a pot. Her hair was pulled back into a ponytail, and there were stains of tomato sauce on her apron. She looked tired but calm, as if the shelter gave her a purpose. Two women stood nearby, setting out plates, talking about the children's activities. Alex paused in the doorway, unsure how to begin. Helen looked up, her face tense. She wiped her hands on her apron and stepped toward him. "Alex," she said, her voice even but cautious. "What are you doing here?" "I came to talk," he said, feeling his words getting stuck. "Helen, I need to apologize. For everything." She crossed her arms, her gaze attentive but not hostile. "Let's go into the hall," she said. "It's noisy here." They went out into the hallway, where it was quieter, except for the distant laughter of children. Helen leaned against the wall, her fingers fiddling with the edge of her apron. "Speak," she said, without malice, but without softness. Alex inhaled. The air smelled of soap and coffee. "I was an idiot," he began. "That night, I got drunk. I snapped at Marcus. You saw it, and Mia, she shouldn't have seen it. I let you down. I'm sorry, Helen. I didn't mean to hurt you." She looked at him, her eyes shining, but there were no tears. "You scared Mia," she said quietly. "She trusted you, Alex. And I thought we were friends, but you withdraw into yourself, and I didn't know how to get through to you." "I know," he said, his voice breaking. "I was drowning. The anniversary, a year without Sarah, Logan, Emma. I couldn't cope. But I'm trying. I was at the lake, wrote a letter to Sarah, burned it, said goodbye." Helen blinked, her face softening. "Did you say goodbye?" she asked. "It's hard." "Yes," he said, looking at the floor. "But I have to. They told me in a dream to live. For them. And I want to. If you give me a chance, Helen, I'm ready to change." For you and Mia. For myself. She was silent, her fingers tightening. Then she stepped closer, her voice growing quieter. Alex, you don't have to be a hero, she said, her words a light in the darkness. Not for me, not for Mia. Just be with us. Be honest. Be yourself. He looked at her eyes warm but serious. Her words lifted the weight off his shoulders, but left the responsibility. He nodded, his throat tightening. I'll try, he said. I promise. She smiled, barely noticeable. That's a start, she said. Mia's in the playroom. Do you want to see her? Yes, he said, feeling his heart beat faster. If she doesn't mind. Come on, Helen said, leading him down the corridor. The playroom was bright, with a star-patterned carpet and tables piled high with markers. Mia was sitting with a girl of about 7, coloring a picture of a dinosaur. Her stuffed dog lay nearby. She looked up, saw Alex, and froze. Mia, he said, crouching down to be at her level. Hi. I came to say I'm sorry. She fidgeted with the marker, her eyes wary. You were angry, she said quietly. I was scared. I know, he said, his voice shaking. I was wrong. I was sad, and I did something stupid. But I don't want you to be afraid. I want to be your friend, if you let me. Mia looked at Helen, then at Alex. Her face softened. Will you fix my flashlight? She asked. It's blinking again. He smiled for the first time that day. Of course, he said. I'll bring a new one if you need it. She nodded and handed him the picture. It's a velociraptor, she said, for you. He picked up the drawing, feeling a lump in his throat. The dinosaur was brightly colored with red stripes. Cool, he said. I'll hang it at home. Helen touched his shoulder. Her hand was warm. We'll stay for dinner, she said. Soup and sandwiches. Nothing fancy. I won't refuse, he said, standing up. Thank you, Helen. She nodded, her smile widening. Just be with us, she repeated, and her words sounded like a promise. They returned to the kitchen, where the volunteers were setting the table. Mia ran to help, humming. Alex watched them, feeling the emptiness in his chest fill not completely, but enough. He knew the road ahead would be long, but for the first time, he wanted to take it. Winter arrived in Mayfield with crunchy snow and the smell of chimneys. The fire station on East Road was bustling with young firefighters, fresh out of the academy, crowding the training room, their boots squeaking on the linoleum. Alex Reeves stood at the board, chalk staining his fingers. He wore his uniform shirt, but no jacket, no longer hiding behind his armor. A year ago, he had been a shadow, drowning in whiskey and wine. Now he taught others how to control fire. Listen, he said, tapping the chalk on the building's layout. Smoke is more dangerous than flame. It blinds, it suffocates. The first thing you do is check the air. Mask, tank, and only then go inside. Got it. The guy in the front row, red-haired and freckled, raised his hand. What if there's no time? He asked. Someone's screaming. You just run. Alex smiled, but his eyes were serious. Then you're dead, and so is the one you're saving, he said. Haste kills. Think, breathe, act. In that order. The boys nodded, some took notes. Marcus, standing by the door, winked. Their friendship had been restored over the years, not without scars, but stronger than before. Alex finished the lesson, wiped his hands on his jeans. Tomorrow is practice. Ladders, hoses. Don't be late, he said, and the room buzzed as the cadets packed their backpacks. Marcus came up and clapped him on the shoulder. Not bad, boss, he said. You'll soon make heroes out of them. Not heroes, Alex replied, clearing away the board. Just people who know what they're doing. Marcus laughed, his voice echoing off the walls. You've changed, brother. Helen and Mia are doing wonders. Alex nodded, feeling warmth in his chest. Helen and Mia. Their names were like the beacon he'd found a year ago when the darkness had nearly swallowed him. He grabbed his jacket, said goodbye to Marcus, and got into the truck. Home was waiting. The cottage on Oak Lane had been transformed in a year. Helen had painted the walls a warm cream, and the daisies Mia had planted in the spring were growing in the yard. Inside, it smelled of apple pie and coffee as Helen cooked dinner, humming an old song about the road. Alex walked in, shaking snow from his boots. The living room was alive with cushions on the sofa, Mia's school books on the table, and her drawings on the wall, including a new dinosaur with a crown. "You're home," Mia shouted, running out of the kitchen, her pigtails bouncing, a yellow smiley face emblazoned on her t-shirt. She hugged him, burying her face in his stomach. "Hey, little one," he said, picking her up. "What's the rush? The dinosaurs escaped?" "No," she giggled. "Mom's baking a pie, and I made you a present." "A gift?" he asked, putting her down on the floor. "Another star?" "Better," she said, running after the drawing. Helen came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her hair was slightly disheveled, her eyes were bright. Over the years, she had become more confident. Her smile was wider, although a shadow of the past sometimes flickers when the phone rang. "Did the lesson go well?" she asked, kissing him on the cheek. "Not bad," he said, hugging her. "These guys think a fire is like in the movies. We'll have to set them straight." "You'll be fine," she said, her voice warm as lamplight. "Dinner's in half an hour. Pie, salad, nothing fancy. It's gorgeous for me," he said, and it was true. A year ago, he couldn't eat without feeling guilty. Now, every dinner with Helen and Mia was a gift. Mia returned holding a piece of paper. On it was a drawing of a fireman, wearing a red helmet, smiling, surrounded by stars. "It's you," she said, beaming, "because you teach people to save." Alex took the drawing, his throat tightening. He remembered Emma's drawing of the dinosaur, which was still lying in the drawer. But this drawing was different, alive, full of light. "It's me," he said, sitting down. "Thank you, Mia. I'll hang it at the unit." She smiled and hugged him. Helen watched, her eyes soft. "Go wash your hands, dear," she said. "Dinner's almost here." Mia ran away, humming. Alex stood up and hung the drawing on the refrigerator, next to the others. Helen touched his hand. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. "You look thoughtful." "Just happy," he said, and it wasn't a lie. "Sometimes I still expect to wake up and have you gone." She squeezed his hand. "We are here," she said, "and you are here. This is our home." He nodded, feeling her words settle in his chest. Home, the word that had cut a year ago, now warmed him. Dinner was noisy, as always. Mia talked about school, about the new teacher who knew everything about dinosaurs. Helen shared a story from the orphanage. She was still volunteering at New Hope, helping the women like they had helped her. Alex listened, interjecting jokes, but mostly enjoying their voices. After dinner, Mia dragged him into the living room to show him a new puzzle. Helen cleared the dishes, humming. "Will you help?" Mia asked, laying out the pieces on the carpet. "Sure," he said, sitting down. "But if it's a dinosaur, you're the boss." "It's a castle," she said, "with a dragon." They worked until Helen joined them with mugs of cocoa. The evening was cold, but the house was warm. Snow was falling outside, soft as feathers. Alex looked at Helen and Mia, feeling that this was his place. Not a replacement for Sarah, Logan, and Emma, but a continuation, like a new fire after the ashes. When Mia started to yawn, Helen said, "It's time to sleep, honey. School tomorrow." "5 more minutes," Mia whined, but her eyes were already closing. "5 minutes, and I'll carry you to bed," Alex said, winking. She giggled, snuggling into him. Helen went to make her bed, and Alex moved the puzzle to the table. Mia climbed into his lap, holding the stuffed dog. "Can we sit by the fireplace?" she asked. "Of course," he said, standing up. The fireplace in the living room was old, with darkened bricks, but Helen had brightened it up with a shelf of books and candles. Alex had lit a fire, and the logs crackled, casting a warm glow on the walls. He sat in the chair, and Mia nestled in his lap, wrapped in a blanket. Her head was on his chest, her breathing soft. Alex, she whispered, almost falling asleep. He replied, stroking her hair. You are my home, she said, her voice quiet but clear. He froze, his heart clenching. Her words were like light shining through cracks. He remembered Sarah laughing by the lake, Logan building forts, Emma painting stars. They were with him, but now he was here with Mia, with Helen, with a new fire. And you are mine, he whispered, kissing the top of her head. Helen walked in holding a book. She stopped when she saw them and smiled. Did she fall asleep? She asked quietly. Almost, he said, carefully lifting Mia. Time for bed. He carried her into the bedroom and laid her down, tucking the covers in. The starry night light he had fixed flickered on the nightstand. Helen stood in the doorway, her eyes shining. You're good, she said when he left. You know that? I'm learning, he said, hugging her. Thank you for not giving up. Never, she answered, clinging to him. They returned to the living room and sat by the fireplace. The fire crackled, snow fell outside the window. Alex watched the flames, feeling the past and present merge. He was alive, and that was enough. Each story is a step towards understanding yourself and the world. If this story left a mark on your soul, don't forget to support it with a like and a comment. Subscribe, because it only gets stronger, deeper, and more interesting. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.